Hello and welcome back to another Rise live stream. This is a series of SEO technical content that we're covering, and I'm really excited to dive into today's topic because it carries a lot of weight and there's just a lot of unknowns behind this. So we really want to demystify. And what we're going to demystify here is breaking down core web vitals and page speed, just totally demystify it. And for those who haven't tuned in before, my name is Ben Lund. I'm the founder of Rise Marketing Group. And Jill, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Jill, and I'm the SEO lead for Rise Marketing Group.
Yeah. So super excited to get into this because, Jill, on the topic of core web vitals, a lot of people, I feel like, heard of it, but they're kind of afraid to touch it because it just seems really complex. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment, and it can be pretty complex. If you are looking to make to fix some errors in your core web vitals, it might be best to do that with the help of someone with coding knowledge of JavaScript or CSS or any other technical errors that might come up with core web vitals. It might be good to have your web developer with you, but it's also good to understand kind of how that's broken up and how it's measured and just how Google sees it in terms of user experience.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're gonna demystify all this because there's some technical speak out there, and we're just gonna put it in layman's terms. As people are chiming in, feel free to leave comments. Bobin, hello, good to see you again. And feel free to also ask some questions within the live stream. So let's get into an agenda real quick here. So we're gonna break down what are core web vitals. It seems like very mysterious, but everyone who's listening to this should definitely listen to this live stream just because Google has been pushing this for a long time. And if Google tells you that you should pay attention to it, if you want to rank on Google, you should probably pay attention to it. So we're going to cover what are core web vitals, how to track core web vitals. There's a lot of great tools out there that you can access this information even today. Then we're going to really start to break down what are the three main components of core web vitals. And then just to cap this off, we're going to talk about a little bit about the importance of core web vitals, and which it kind of gets into why we're even having this discussion, because it can really critically help a website rank higher on Google. And then lastly, strategizing for optimizing website performance just to meet these core web vital thresholds. So that's the agenda that we have here. If anyone is tuning in live, feel free to drop any questions in. So, but let's just jump right into it here. So, Jill, high level, what are core web vitals?
So core web vitals in total are metrics that are used by Google to help both web developers and site owners, and even Google themselves, to understand how to improve the user experience on your site. So as you know, poor user experience can lead to just a lot of negative things. So there will be a higher bounce rate, lower session durations, even less returning visitors, which can all hurt your organic performance on your site. So it is really important to follow the suggestions of updating based on core web vital reporting. It's a great just roadmap of how to fix your site from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. And Google's been really pushing this out because Google will factor this in terms of ranking, because ultimately they want a good web experience for their users. And if there's sites out there that just has a really poor user experience, whether it's based off of page speed or stability or things like that, Google's not going to rank. And they've standardized these type of metrics that all websites are going to be really assessed on. And so Google's just telling websites of, hey, here are the things that we're looking out for, because based off of our data, they're really important for user experience. And it'll even give you a score. And then so again, as I mentioned earlier, if Google's telling you that you should pay attention to something, you probably should. And there's a significant amount of upside to this that we're going to get into a little bit. Anything else that maybe we should talk about high level about core web vitals?
Just another thing on the importance. So core web vitals does have a lot to do with the page speed of how things are loading and when users can interact with things on your site. And users don't like to wait very long for those things to load. So there are a lot of terms of measurement in there in terms of seconds of they most likely won't wait more than a few seconds for a page to load. So you'll want to make sure that all of the measurements that are through the scoring systems of Core Web Vitals are being followed.
Yeah, absolutely. So what type of tools are out there that we can start to assess Core Web Vitals and just get some type of a read there?
So there's a lot of great tools out there, and a lot of them are free to use so that you can assess your Core Web Vitals. Two of them are actually from Google. So the first one is Google Search Console. You may already have this set up on your site. I know we have another webinar that covered Google Search Console as well. It's a very easy free tool to use. You will need to have your site owner verified as an owner of the site in order to see the Core Web Vital reporting within Google Search Console. So if you have multiple users within that account, they may not all be able to see the Core Web Vital reporting without that verified ownership. And that verified ownership will take about 24 to 48 hours if it's not already set up for you to use Google Search Console. It's a nice section in the dashboard, and you can even see a screenshot of it right there that it'll show you your URLs and whether they're performing poor, whether they need improvement, or whether they're good. And then it'll give you some detailed reporting of how you might be able to fix any ones that are poor that need improvement.
Yep. Yeah, and Jill, as you mentioned, I'm glad you brought this up on our last webinar. You guys can access this on our YouTube channel. We talked about Google Search Console, how to set it up, and the whole purpose of that. So if you don't have Google Search Console set up, definitely feel free to watch our prior webinar on how to set this up. But this is a free tool. These are great free resources that Google gives out to all marketers to assess this. So this is definitely a good one. And then what about PageSpeed Insights?
So PageSpeed Insights is actually another free tool offered by Google. It's really great for in-depth analysis. You can only analyze one URL at a time, but it is very important to see how it breaks it down based on their scoring system. It'll provide you with a overall performance score from 0 to 100, with 100 being the best. 0 to 49 would be considered a bad performance score. 50 to 89 needs improvement. 90 to 100 is good. And it'll give you a lot of great detail in there based on all of the key metrics that Core Web Vitals offers. It is something that you will most likely need your web developer to take a look at with you. It does get very heavy from a technical standpoint, so you'll need them to help review some of those changes and make them on your site.
Yeah, definitely. And again, another free tool. And it's actually interesting. Google has PageSpeed is still very, very important, but this was probably like even 5 years ago, 7 years ago. User experience was primarily, or at least publicly acknowledged as really driven by PageSpeed. You have to have fast PageSpeed because otherwise it's not going to load. It's a bad user experience. But Google expanded their metrics. It's not just PageSpeed. PageSpeed is super important, but there's so many other elements of Core Web Vitals that we're going to get into. So with that, let's talk about what are the key metrics, high level, for Core Web Vitals.
So there are 3 key metrics that make up Core Web Vitals. Right now, it's largest contentful paint, cumulative layout shift, and then interaction to next paint. Before March 2024, when it switched over, there was first input delay, which was also a key metric. That was replaced by interaction to next paint, which we can cover as well. But that basically was just a better measurement of kind of the same kind of data for responsiveness.
Yep. And for any marketer, business owner that's watching this right now, you're probably super confused. Like, what's LCP? What's CLS? IMP? I totally hear you. I get it. And even some of these words are a little jumbled. But on the following slides, we're going to break down everything for you so that way each of these makes sense. But really, if you optimize towards these and understand where to get this type of information, assess your score, and then optimize towards these, you're going to see some level of improvement, not only from a user perspective, but also SEO. So going into more detail within Core Web Vitals, largest contentful paint, otherwise known as LCP. Jill, why don't you share a little bit more about what does that mean?
So quickly, LCP is how quickly the main content of a page loads. It is measured in time with an ideal score being 2.5 seconds or less. It gives website owners and Google just a better understanding of when pages are ready to be interacted with. So before first contentful paint is another measurement. However, that one may not be the best indicator of when users are able to interact with the page. With first contentful paint, the first thing to render on a page could be something like the logo on the top of the page. So that's not necessarily part of the primary information that you'll see on a page. So it's not as good of an indicator of when users will get to interact with the page. They'll still have to wait for that main part of the page to load. So largest contentful paint could be something like a primary video that encompasses a lot of the information that you'll need for a page. That video might be a high file or a large video file. So that will be the largest thing to load on the page. Users will have to wait for that to load in order to interact fully with the page and get the full benefit out of the page. And another example of that would be on an e-commerce page, a product image. A product image is really important so that they can see what the product looks like before they add it to the cart or before they consider purchasing. If that page doesn't, or if that product image doesn't load quickly, it's really going to hurt their decision of whether they want to pay for that product or not.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for breaking that down. And and outside of just meeting Google standards, and this is going to help out for any e-commerce marketers that are listening to this or business owners, if you can optimize towards increasing the speed on LCP, otherwise known as largest contentful paint, for that product hero image or video, that's going to help your conversion rates because users are going to get the information way faster, and then otherwise, if it takes a while, they're just going to get frustrated and bounce. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And ideal score is what, 2.5 seconds or less?
Yep, 2.5 seconds or less.
Awesome. And again, through the tools that we recommended, Google Search Console, PageSpeed Insights, you can see currently how you're scoring on these. Next is a cumulative layout shift, otherwise known as CLS within Core Web Vitals. What is this?
So we've all been on a page on some sites that the information or the layout on the page kind of jumps around a bit as it's still loading. It could be because there's a banner on the top of the page that was the last thing to load, and so all of the information on the page jumps down from there. This could really just hurt the user interaction on the page. They'll have to wait longer to interact with the page, and it'll be harder with layout shifts for them to interact fully. So example, if a user's returning to a product page they've already been to, they already know where the add to cart button is and they're ready to purchase. If there's a layout shift that happens on that page, they'll try to click on the button and the button will maybe jump lower onto the page. This is just going to cause a lot of frustration for the user, and they won't be able to interact in the way that they want to as quickly as possible. So there is a different scoring system for that as well, with the ideal score being 0.1 or lower.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this is super smart from Google's perspective. It's not always about page speed of like how fast that page loads, but also what's happening once that page is loaded. Is it changing different renders and things like that? And if so, that's really going to throw off the user experience. So this is another super critical one that Google's telling us to follow, and definitely take a look at the reports. And on this slide right here is just a sample screenshot of where you want to be or what's being reported, and the CLS score of what you should obtain of 0.1 or lower. Another metric within Core Web Vitals is interaction to next pane, otherwise known as INP. Jill, why don't you share what exactly is interaction to next pane?
So interaction to next pane actually replaced first input delay as a key metric back in March of this year. It just gives a more accurate understanding of responsiveness of a page based on user input. So with first input delay, that was a measurement of the first interaction when the first interaction of a page was measured. INP is all interactions on a page and how those are measured. So it just gives a better understanding of the total responsiveness of your pages based on all user inputs. One example of this is that users may click on more than one thing on a web page. So INP will give you a total picture of how long the web page took to respond to all of their inputs. And there is their own scoring for INP as well. So that ideal score would be less than 200 milliseconds.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And again, it's not just about page speed, and it's about even once page loads and then users start to respond, how quick is the website responding to those users? And again, it's just going to really help out from user experience. Google's going to appreciate it, and your website's going to perform a lot better. So Core Web Vitals as a ranking factor for SEO. I know we're not engineers at Google creating the algorithm, but Jill, what's your take on how important Core Web Vitals are for SEO to rank higher on Google?
So with any SEO strategy, the main goal of that is just to provide the greatest value to the user. That's Google's goal, and that should be a business owner or site owner's goal as well. So with Core Web Vitals, that's just Google's assessment of user experience on your site. So it's just going to help you get a greater understanding from a technical standpoint of how you can improve your site so that users are able to easily interact with things, your site's able to easily respond to their input, and you'll be able to see in full detail how to make that a faster and better experience for them.
Yeah, definitely. And because you could have the best content in the world, the most valuable content in the world, but if your site is just from a performance standpoint is really just lacking, Google's not going to prioritize that. But if you have excellent Core Web Vitals and really good content, you have to believe Google is going to push you up higher and higher on the rankings. And also, Google tracks everything. It really does. It tracks everything of how many people click into your listings and then what they're doing on the site. So make sure that this is covered. And as I mentioned before, if Google's telling you this is important, you should probably take some note. This isn't just a third-party SEO agency telling you it's important. It's definitely coming directly from the source. Now, all right, so let's say someone pulls in these reports and there's one or two Core Web Vitals that seem a little off. What should be an appropriate next step?
So ideally, this is something you would want to have bring in your web developer for. These can be really heavy changes sometimes to make on your site that you wouldn't want to make without the experience of a web developer. Some of them require coding knowledge, such as JavaScript errors or CSS. So that's when you'll want to have their expertise in there. And they'll be able to see in the reporting through page speed insights or some less detailed reporting through Google Search Console that may encompass more than one URL. You'll be able to see all of that information and some reporting of how to fix it right within those tools.
Yeah. So great next step is make sure you have Google Search Console, start pulling these reports, and then assess, are there issues? If you have green across the board, then you're set, no action required. If you're seeing a lot of red, that Google is flagging that a couple of these Core Web Vitals that we covered are not up to par, then take a look at what Google is asking. If you're not technically savvy for it, then it would make sense to hire a developer who has a lot of experience with Core Web Vitals to start working through it. But the first thing to do is understand it, which we're covering this presentation, and then start to assess what your current scores are. And again, if you're falling short, then hire a developer, or if you have an in-house developer, prioritize this up because this is definitely going to help out. And if anyone wants to chat about assessing Core Web Vitals, definitely check us out, risemkg.com, or email me directly at ben@risemkg.com. For those who are listening, we continue to put out webinars every other week covering a variety of topics. Right now, we're on a series of technical SEO. So feel free to subscribe just to stay in the know of the latest. And Jill, thank you as always for sharing all of your knowledge on this.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you.